Forward to cloud. All right, excellent. Welcome back, Heidi. So we're trying something new. We're trying something new here. We'll see how it goes. For those who are listening to the podcast, it's also available via the YouTube channel if you do want to watch it as a video. So we're going to give it a go, see how it works. Heidi, I want to ask you, because the past couple of years, you have been not only living through a pandemic, but essentially this is your first time as president during the negotiations. And when I say president, I mean president of QPAD, but I think it's even one step further. You never had the opportunity as a local union president to have negotiations. So I wanted to ask you, given all of that, you survived, you're still here.
I'm still here.
And looking back, I mean, of course there's a pandemic, but looking back at negotiations, what is it that surprised you the most about the entire process?
Well, you're right. This is my first round of negotiations where I've got the 2 feet in it. And what an unusual year for negotiations in the middle of a pandemic. Normally, we meet with our lead negotiators in person, we meet with the other presidents in person, and this was almost all done through Zoom. So it was very, very unusual. And I guess the biggest surprise, there was a couple of things that surprised me. The first thing that I think is really important for teachers to know is how a strike mandate moves negotiations forward. That surprised me because I've been a teacher on the picket line wondering, I hope this does something. And it actually does do something. The day that we got our mandate to strike, the government started to move on their end. And then when we had our innovative strike, that was almost like the floodgates opened and all of a sudden the negotiators were actually working at the table. So it's really, really important that we are mobilized, that we're together, and that we're in an action together. And I thought that was really quite revealing. The other thing that surprised me, I guess, is how much, well, first of all, how long the process is. It's so long, it's very drawn out, and how most of the agreement or the negotiated agreement actually ends up happening in the last 2 weeks, the last crunch. So there's a lot of blah, blah, blah for a year. And then at the last, the last push after, of course, teachers have mobilized, that's where it all happens. It all happens very, very, in a very small amount of time. And it's very political. Like a lot of things, it takes the political voice to really push the negotiations to the end. So those were some of the surprises and things that I found out through in the last year about negotiations.
Yeah, that's quite a bit. And now entering the new school year, we're still in the process. We're seeing the light coming towards the end of the tunnel. But having said that, in September, teachers are going to be called by their local unions to general assemblies. That's and right. What's the reason behind that?
Well, so in the spring, the assemblies were to vote on the sectoral agreement. So now we're voting in the fall, in the coming weeks, on the intersectoral agreements, the agreement in principle, because it's the members who will agree or not to the agreement in principle. So these are the general parameters for the public sector. And if you want, I can kind of go through some of those elements with you.
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay, so some of the elements that we're going to be voting on, and there's not much because in the general parameters, you basically have 4 subjects. You have salary, you have pension, you have parental leave, and you have regional disparities. So in terms of salary, it's going to be 2% 2020 all the way till the March 2022, I believe. So it's tight. So those are and then our agreement will end in 2023. So on April the 1st, 2020, there's 2%. April the 1st, 2022, another 2%. These are both retroactive because those are in the past. And then on April the 1st of 2022, this school year, there'll be another 2%. We're also getting 2 premiums of $600. The first premium will be paid once the contract is signed. And the second premium will be paid in January. And those are kind of like COVID premiums in a sense. That's what they're kind of called. In terms of pension and parental rights, all there is a committee. So nothing was really negotiated. And in those committees, that's where they're going to basically negotiate and talk about what we're going to look for in the coming negotiation, the next negotiations after our contract expires in 2023.
I'm sorry, Heidi, these committees, have they already established who's going to be participating in them, and like the different groups, or has that been discussed yet?
Yeah, so we belong to, when we're negotiating, we belong to the FSC, la Fédération Syndicale des Enseignants. So we belong to their federation, and that federation belongs to the CSQ, Centrale Syndicale du Québec. And so it will be the CSQ that will be representing us at those tables. And I believe the other central unions will also be at the tables. So the CSN, the FIC. So there's not just us, but all the public sector workers will be sitting at those tables for pension and parental rights. It doesn't mean necessarily that what comes out of those discussions will end up being on the table for 2023, but at least the unions get a chance to really say, this is what we're looking for, and this is what we expect. So at least the government will have heard that way ahead of time, and hopefully that will reduce the length of negotiating those 2 items at the next round. We'll see. I'm not sure, but we'll see. And then the other one is regional disparities. So there's a couple of things happening for regional disparities. We only have about 50 members that live in the north, and so they'll see some tax benefits for their outings in the north. Okay,
wonderful. And so how are the elements that we are going to be voting on different from what we saw in the spring? If we're looking at the two, say, well, I voted on something in the spring as a teacher. Why am I being called again at this point?
Yeah, so as I said, in the spring, we were looking at sectoral demands, which are working conditions for teachers, very specific to teachers. Whereas in the fall, we're actually voting on public sector workers' conditions, which are a bit bigger in parameter. So what we voted on in the spring was resources for special needs, class size, mentorship, supervision, and we actually got salary specific for teachers for the first time ever. So that was interesting as well. But so the sectoral is done. We're in the middle of writing up the clauses, and that was already confirmed by our members. They voted 88% in favor of that agreement in principle on our working conditions as teachers.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. And like you say, I remember in the spring, it happened it all happened very fast once we started the innovative strike, and that was exciting, and it was overwhelming.
It was amazing. It worked really well.
Yeah,
it caused really a lot of waves.
It did. It did. Well, anything different, eh? And I understand that to a certain extent, but then when you see the result, it's like, okay, it's a little reassuring at least.
Yeah.
And okay, you were speaking earlier about the retroactive pay. So for the past 2 springs and for the upcoming school year, and when we're talking about the retroactive portion of it, when is that expected to be paid to teachers?
Well, first we have to go to the assemblies and get the okay for the intersectorial agreement in principle. So that's why you're being called to assemblies. Then it has to be written. All the clauses have to be written, and they're in the process of doing that right now. We're very close to finishing that. I think one of the things that's not quite finished is the workload, which is going to change in 2022. So that has to be very clear and it has to be done properly. So that's why it's taken a little bit longer to write the texts. Then it has to be signed. I'll be signing the collective agreement, which is really cool, along with the school boards. They have to agree also. So it'll be signed. And then once that's done, then the process for retroactive begins. Now, at the last round in 2016, there was an agreement to say that those payments would be made 60 days, within 60 days after the signing of the agreement. That was something that was also agreed upon. This time, we don't know. So we really, I'm kind of guessing here that if everything goes as planned, hopefully by Christmas, we'll have some retroactive pay.
That would be fantastic.
Bonus yes. Before Christmas.
Well, you've already given good reasons to show up, but maybe if we could end up with sending a message to teachers why it's important, being called to another assembly to show up and vote, just to reiterate the importance of that at this point in time.
Well, it's the democratic right of all the teachers to come and pronounce themselves on the collective agreement. And it's not my collective agreement. It's not QPAT's collective agreement. It's the teachers' collective agreement. So it's really important to be part of that and to come to your assemblies to say, yes, I agree, or no, I don't agree. It's like hearing your voice if you want. The union is the teachers. In other words, you, the teachers, are the union. So it's really important to be part of that process. And it's important to know your rights, to know your collective agreement, and also to participate in that collective voice. So by participating in a General Assembly, you're having your voice heard. So that's why I think it's so important to participate in the assembly. And I will be at most of the assemblies. So hopefully I'll be able to see some teachers there and they can see my face again. They might be sick of seeing my face.
I don't know about that.
But I look forward to seeing them. I always look forward to hearing from them. And the beauty of these assemblies is that you're in your local agreements, which is a small group usually, depending on your local union, and you get a chance to put up your hand and say what you think, and it's really, really important. And I love hearing the voices of teachers, so I look forward to that.
Oh, no doubt. So teachers, keep your eyes open. You're going to be hearing from your local unions very, very shortly. These are happening all throughout the month of September. So it's important to show up to vote so that we can get this signed and we can get you all the benefits and all the rights and the retroactive pay so we can move on. Because as you know, Heidi, it's going to begin shortly. We're going to be already planning for the next round. So.
Yes, as a matter of fact, we'll probably be consulting the teachers this year, maybe even.
Wow. All right. Thank you, Heidi. Keep us posted.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye.